Hello everyone. Today we're going to discuss a very important topic, and the topic is origin and growth of sociology. As we know that this discipline is very much relevant in the understanding of public sphere, in the understanding of social problems, in the understanding of various social issues, or in the understanding of various social concept or sociological terminologies. So in our everyday life, sociological knowledge or sociological literature becomes highly relevant to understand the complex nature of society. So when we're talking about this topic, origin and growth of sociology, it becomes very important for us to locate each one of us to the roots of sociological origin, as well as emergence of sociological literature or sociological discipline. So in today's session we will be understanding origin and growth of sociology, and the topic is it's a very much attractive, and it's a very much you can discuss this topic anywhere. You can discuss in philosophy, history, political science, or when you're preparing for competitive examinations, then this topic also becomes very important. So my main concern about this topic is to discuss more in detail about the origin and growth of sociology. As we know that we are sharing many kinds of literature knowledge on YouTube or social media sites, but somewhere we are not getting depth information regarding the origin and growth of sociology. So in this session or lecture we will be understanding the how sociology as a discipline has been emerged, and who are the sociological thinkers who are the main part of that particular period, or who are engaged with that historical period when sociology has been launched. Growth of sociology means we have to discuss about different areas, different regions, to understand the expansion of sociological knowledge or sociological literature. So let's start with the first. I will be showing you the slide. The reason is to make you more clear about the topic. So to make this presentation or lecture more systematic, so I think PPT is the best tool to adopt to make this session more useful and significant. So if I talk about number one, then look at the the written text here. Sociology has once treated as social philosophy or philosophy of history, emerged as an independent social science in the 19th century. Auguste Comte, 1798 to 1857, a Frenchman, is considered as the founder of sociology. Comte also has coined the word sociology. So this is very interesting to understand that there was a sociology before the beginning of sociology, sociological literature or systematic sociology. So always when we start understanding sociology, we start from Auguste Comte. So Auguste Comte become becomes the first social thinker who is talking about sociology. And if I talk about Auguste Comte, he was not a trained sociologist. He was not trained in social practices or social policy or public policy. He was a kind of social philosopher. He was a trained in that, and he was interested in understanding the the social order at that time. So we have to understand the context. That is basically our concern. If I talk about Auguste Comte, means I'm talking about between 1798 to 1857. So let's understand who was Auguste Comte. That is one thing that we have to understand. I'll be showing one slide on Auguste Comte's biography. But Auguste Comte was the secretary of Saint Simon. Saint Simon was also a thinker, a social thinker. So he was also interested in understanding the the dynamics between social sciences and natural sciences. So somewhere social sciences were losing their identity in the public sphere. They were not able to understand the practical social reality through scientific methods. So because if you talk about 15th and 16th century, when there was going on kind of competition, a kind of war between natural and social sciences. So somewhere natural sciences, we have seen that the literature have dominated the social sciences, the methodologies, the different kind of ideas. The reason was that many disciplines were struggling for their existence. So sociology during 17th and 18th century or 19th century has been emerged, and therefore this discipline is talking about scientific sociology, is talking about systematic sociology. The reason is this discipline it adopt a scientific methodology. And if I talk about the expansion of this discipline, it's very much wider right now in 21st century. So Comte become the first thinker who tried to understand the social dynamics, who tried to understand the social static, who tried to understand the positive positivistic sociology or positivistic philosophy. So positive sociology means I'm talking about scientific sociology. Okay, so this philosophy denotes a kind of scientific belief. There should be a scientific temperament, and that temperament becomes very important to understand the very complex nature of society. And in this book, positive philosophy, that book has been written in between 1830 to 1842, and this is a very interesting book. And in this book, Comte is talking about three kinds of societies, three kinds of changes. He's talking about theological, where he's talking about theological stage, or a kind of stage where people, they had belief on some kind of superstitious kind of things. So according to Comte, I'm talking about. So metaphysical is talking about some kind of natural phenomena. Some people are talking about, they were relating with the natural phenomena, they were relating with agriculture. Then he's talking about positivist positive philosophy, means he's talking about positive stage. In this stage he's talking about scientific development of the mind, expansion of human mind. So at a glance he's talking about a kind of expansion of human mind, ideas, and you relate these concepts with the with the imagination, human imagination, or social imagination. So the same way, if you look at society also, it has passed through from a simple to the complex nature of society. So that is a major concern of Auguste Comte, and he tried to make sociology more scientific. As a Frenchman, he belonged to France, and therefore we consider him as the founder of sociology, or the founding father of sociology. And in 1830 9, he coined this term called sociology, that you have to remember. And if I talk about this particular discipline, it's one of the youngest discipline in social science. One of the youngest. Okay, youngest means during 19th century this discipline has been discovered, and this person was the main behind the emergence of sociology. So we don't have to forget Auguste Comte. We have to read about Auguste Comte more in detail. So it's one of the youngest. If you compare sociology with political science, economics, history, or whatever, you will find that sociological literature has become much relevant in the public discourse. Now we're talking about everything. If you're reading political science, you need sociological knowledge. If you are reading economics, you need sociological analysis. If you are doing reading history, you need a kind of comparative analysis. Then sociology or sociological literature there also becomes very much relevant. So now the question arises that what's the major concern of sociology? So if I talk about the major concern of physics, then it remains with engineering. If I talk about biology, it remains with medical sciences, or plants. If I talk about botany, so every discipline has their nature and scope. If I talk about sociology, means it talks about society. It talks about uh, the scientific study of society. So our major concern remains with the society, but also our concern also remains with the scientific nature of study. So we have to conduct a study where we have to implement, we have to apply scientific tools and techniques. Let's understand Auguste Comte was born uh, in France on 19th Jan 1798 and died on 5th September 1857. Please remember, he was the founder of the discipline sociology. First, he named the science which is set out to establish as social physics. So the earlier name of sociology was social physics. So he was French philosopher and social thinker. He was not a sociologist. Uh, Works of Auguste Comte, Positive Philosophy, 1842 in 6 volumes. Positive Polity, 1851 to 54. So remember his two writings. So important concept is given like positivism, already we discussed. Law of three stages like metaphysical, theological, and positivist. So social statics means I'm talking about social structure, and dynamics means which keeps changing. So then religion of humanity, this is a very interesting book, and talks about the the role of religion, talks about the humanitarian values, and sometimes this book also becomes very much important to understand the contemporary issue and challenges. So let's first understand the beginning of sociology as fourfold division, the political philosophy. So before 18th century, you can see there was a kind of discussions. There was a kind of discourse regarding the social sciences. So sociology becomes very important there to understand the Europe during that time, because Europe was going through a kind of crisis. There was a kind of social disorder. So sociology or sociological literature becomes very important there to to conceptualize that particular situation and formulated a very different ideas for the welfare of society. So philosophy of history, it if we talk about sociology, then it has association with the history also, philosophy also. So if we talk about biological theories of evolution, biological theories of evolution, we have theories by Charles Darwin. So we can relate with that origin of species, published in 1859. So we have another thinker called Herbert Spencer. So Herbert Spencer, he was a biologist, he was not a sociologist or a social thinker, but he was interested in understanding the social structure. So he developed a kind of analogy, organic analogy. And what is organic analogy? Basically, it talks about, if I talk about an organism, it has different, structure. It has a structure, and different parts of the structure, they perform according to the needs of that structure. So in the same way, if I talk about society, in society also we have different structure, different organs. It can be, your political institution, it can be your religious institution, it can be your, family institutions, it can be different institutions. So each and every institution becomes very important for the survival of the entire social structure. In the same way, if I talk about an organism, if I talk about an organism, then heart, brain, everything becomes very important, and everything is interdependent, interrelated. So that is all about how Herbert Spencer has discussed about the organic analogy or the biological theory of evolution. So one thing keep in mind, Herbert Spencer was talking about simple to complex or kind of phenomena. So that is also very interesting to understand, because evolutionary theories means it's talking about evolution from simple to complex. Then number four is the movements for social and political reforms. Then we have different, industrial revolutions we had, French revolutions we had. So always remember that sociology we have to locate in the West. Indian sociology we can discuss also, because in India we have G.S. Ghurye, who is considered as the founding father of sociology. But before going into the details of Indian sociology, we have to understand the Western sociological context. So these are the thinker that I can tell you. First one is Auguste Comte. Already that he was a French sociologist. He's talking about positivism. Herbert Spencer already discussed with you. He's talking about organic analogy. He's talking about the structure and function of an organism, biology with the society. Karl Marx, a German scholar. Herbert Spencer he was from English scholar. He was from British. Karl Marx was from German. He was a German philosopher. So Karl Marx is better known for class struggle, and he's talking about conflict sociology. So his concept of like historical materialism, he was talking about different class system, and he was talking about the kind of conflict between different classes um, at different periods of time. Dialectical materialism means talking about matter So he was not, he was discussing or having a discourse with different, social thinkers. So he majorly is talking about, conflict sociology. Durkheim is talking about, uh, a kind of sociology where we have different kinds of, social fact. And he was a French sociologist, and Durkheim is considered as the, the first person who has contributed a lot to the sociological, literature. So Durkheim, Max Weber, and Karl Marx becomes very important thinkers in sociology. And Durkheimian sociology is more of, a kind of scientific sociology, because he's talking about different kinds of ideas. But also we have to become very much critical of some of his, ideas, thoughts, that you have to keep in mind. Max Weber is talking about a kind of, micro sociology. And Max Weber, 1864-1920, he was German sociologist. He was a trained sociologist, I can tell you. Durkheim and Max Weber, they both are, PhD in, sociology. So Max Weber is talking about interpretative understanding of social action. So he's talking about, a kind of sociology where we have to understand things more in a deeper manner. We have to understand the subjectivity, that is very important. If I talk about Emile Durkheim, methodology, uh, more of, you can say that he's talking about objectivity, but Durkheim is talking about subjectivity, because different people are different, imagination, different opinions, different ideas. So we have to take care of such ideas also when we have to analyze, or we have to give, any kind of interpretation. So this is a kind of, development of or growth of sociological theory or sociology. So two things you have to keep in mind. Number one, the social forces and intellectual forces. So if I talk about the social forces, then we have, political revolutions, industrial revolutions, the rise of capitalism, rise of socialism, feminism, urbanization, religious change, and growth of science. One thing you have to keep in mind, that industrial revolution and French revolutions, both revolutions are very important to understand the social forces in the West. So next, if I talk about, the intellectual forces and the development of sociological theory, then we have the Enlightenment or rational thinking, logical, democratic, equality, humanitarian awareness. So Enlightenment means, I'm talking about, so people during, 15th and 16th century onwards, they were talking about science. They were talking about, logical. They were talking about democracy. They were talking about equality. They were talking about humanitarian. They were talking about more of a, aware society. So please keep in your mind that after 15th and 16th century, we're talking about Renaissance. We're talking about enlightenment. So you have to keep in your mind that this means we're talking about scientific stage. So people are talking about more of, a kind of rationality, objectivity. So that period becomes very important. And they were, they were fighting for their rights, and that period also becomes very important for sociological literature, for the development of sociological ideas. And these two thinkers, Saint Simon and Auguste Comte, they, you know they have come up with this idea, and they develop sociology as a discipline. And Auguste Comte's role becomes very important there. Number two, the conservative reaction to enlightenment. So there were certain thinkers, they were, against the enlightenment. They were talking about that there should be no, scientific state. We have to believe on the earlier system. Number three, the development of French sociology, Auguste Comte, Emile Durkheim. So French sociology means these two thinkers belong to France. Auguste Comte is talking about positivism. Emile Durkheim is talking about social fact. Number four, development of German sociology. So German sociology means, I'm talking about Karl Marx. And now in contemporary, 21st century, we have different thinkers who belong to German, and there were different thinkers who were talking about, neo-Marxism. Althusser is there. So remember that also. Number five, the origin of British sociology means Herbert Spencer. The origin of Italian sociology means Wilfredo Pareto. Is talking about circulation of leads. Number seven, Indian sociology, we have Govind Sadashiv Ghure, and he was the founder of Indian sociology. So let's have a quick, understanding of, the origin and growth of sociology. In lump sum, I'm going to discuss this topic in detail. Just a minute. So please remember, origin of sociology means we are talking about, a kind of chronology. You have to write a kind of chronology. So what you have to remember, you have to start from 15th and 16th century, and you have to understand the context. what was happening, in Europe during 15th and 16th century. What is this modernity? What is this enlightenment? What is this Renaissance? So always remember that, number one. Number two, remember that we had, different, social thinkers who belonged to different countries. They contributed a lot to the origin of sociological literature, or this sociological discipline. So the major thing for sociology was to understand the modernity, to understand the social disorder. So sociology, helped, uh, you know, uh, in the betterment of society during that time. And sociological knowledge also becomes very important to understand the complex, social problems. It can be different problems, and there were certain, impact of French Revolution, Industrial Revolution. So industrial revolution, majorly I'm talking about, the changes due to industries. People are migrating from, rural areas to the urban centers, and they were getting jobs there. So urbanization started. We can understand that there was urbanization. So understand this, all kind of ideas. And 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 at the time we can see the role of, Karl Marx talking about, the exploitation of labors, exploitation of, the exploitation of, the exploitation in the class system also. So they were bourgeoisie, they were proletariat. So understand that also. So in growth of sociology, we have to understand, the French sociology, we have to understand the British sociology, we have to understand, the German sociology. And these are different topics, and we need, one session on, on every, topic. It can be French, it can be German, it can be, British, it can be Italian sociology. So that we will discuss separately. So separately we will discuss. And this topic was just an introduction to the, origin and growth of sociology. And I hope you're clear with the idea. And please understand, please listen this lecture more carefully. uh, I have discussed, some very important points in this session. And in the next session, we'll be understanding more about origin and growth of sociology. And so I'm going to end this session here. So thank you so much.